and welcome to another Shooting the Shit. Thank you very much for joining us. This is we keep calling it a podcast. Obviously, it's not a podcast because we're doing it on Facebook Live, but it might become a podcast. It might stay as a Facebook Live. I'm probably going to carry on calling it a podcast. But anyway, regardless, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, today it's me and Hannah and Marisha back once again with the Renegade Master.
Showing his age there, though. Once again for the Renegade Master.
To the people. This sounds quite well, hasn't it?
Anyway, today we are going to talk about presenteeism, because the whole point of this session is that we talk about feminism and business, two things that I love feminism, and I love running our little business, and I thought, why not bring the two things together and have a bit of a chat with some other feminist gals, but I couldn't find any, so I've so tell us who you are. Hannah, first of all, who are you?
I'm Hannah from Grow Traffic.
And Marisha?
I'm Marisha from Noise. I don't know. I know. I'm like and yeah, Mama Bear and B for B. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, Marisha, the marmalade gal, Lady Marmalade, as we call you in our house now.
I'm just going to embrace that. I'm just going to embrace it. It's fine.
Lady Marmalade. Marisha made, for those who don't know, Marisha makes the most amazing marmalade. You should buy some because it's bloody delicious. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about marmalade. We are here to talk about feminism and business. And today we are going to talk about presenteeism. Now, I know we've mentioned before, but Hannah and I are big fans of the Fortunately with Fee and Jane podcast. Do you listen to that, Marisha? I've never asked you. Have you ever listened to it? No. Well, it's Fee and Jane. It's a BBC Radio 4.
Fee and Jane.
Yeah, I listen to it religiously. And they made a passing comment in last week's podcast about presenteeism and how it's always worked better for men in the workplace. And I thought, that's something that I want to talk about. I want to talk about presenteeism. So that's what we're going to dig into today. So just for those of the uninitiated, what is presenteeism? It is essentially the culture of having to be in the workplace. And usually it's having to be in the workplace from 9 until 5. And the reason that it has always been seen to favour men over women is obviously women have traditionally been the ones who've had to drop the children off at school in the morning, pick them up from school, whether that be at 3:30 or it be from the after school club, and needed to be seen, to be believed, if you like, in the office. And obviously, if you've got poorly children or you've got childcare, or you've got elderly parents that you're looking after, being in the office from 9 to 5 is something that is quite tricky.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, it has become a feminist issue, but go on, Hannah, tell us.
It's also going into work when you're sick, which costs the economy $1.5 billion every year. People being in work when they're sick because obviously they infect other people. Mm-hmm. And it's also just being in the office more than is necessary, never really switching off, never turning off your emails, working when you get home, leads to huge reductions in productivity, musculoskeletal issues, mental health issues. It costs double the amount as absenteeism in the workplace. It's a huge crisis actually in British workplaces. And the comment on Fee and Jane was that the coronavirus it might change the way that presenteeism works. It might reduce the amount of presenteeism. So yeah, we were just wondering
The other thing as well, though, and this is how I've experienced it, is in paternity leave, maternity and paternity leave. You know, the law was changed a couple of years ago now to enable men to take a larger chunk of paternity leave after a baby was born, or even for men and women to share some of the maternity/paternity leave. But men are expected to be in the office. And so whilst it is enshrined in law that they can take paternity leave, they often don't because they are perceived to be weak, or, you know, they're expected to be in the office, and looking after children is still a women's job. So that's in a nutshell what presenteeism is. So first of all, have either of you experienced presenteeism? Marisha, have you come across this? Has it been on your radar?
Yeah. I mean, it's a think I'm hyper aware of it as well, I guess, really. I don't have any children. And I guess
Lucky day.
the flip side, I guess, is almost that I feel like I should be there. I've got no other excuse. But, you know, I've also, you know, experienced and managed men that have had to fill that, you know, gap or whatever it is, you know, whether it be picking kids up from school, whether it be sickness or whatever. And I've experienced, you know, how other people respond to that as well, you know, and I think it's, it's a massive problem. And I think the coronavirus kind of, you know, issues, I guess, that is kind of stuff that's come out of the back of coronavirus is actually going to make it easier for everybody. It's, you know, male and female, and whatever their role is, you know, in the family. I have experienced it for sure. You know, I'm probably one of the things that's part of the problem, in as much as I also feel that I should always be there. Do you know what I mean?
It is that thing to be, you have to be seen to sort of prove that you are working.
Yeah.
You've experienced it.
Yeah, I think I've experienced it from both ends. So as a manager, like Marisha says, I've managed people who have been exhibiting presenteeism. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second.
It's like the BBC. Is someone going to come in and like swoop her out and like, you know, commando roll across the floor?
Where's the nanny to take her out of the scenario?
I know, this is horrendous. I will sack that over. I've worked in places where I've had to manage this, like my manager's expectations of when staff are and aren't, should and shouldn't be in, to the point of, I remember one time a woman had a really bad chest infection and she fell asleep at her desk because, like, you know, you can't help it, can you? And you've got a galloping temperature. And I just thought, this is insane that this woman has felt like she has to come in for this. But then on the other side, I've worked at places where it's just been so ingrained in the culture. I remember I had a miscarriage a few years ago and I was obviously off work with it, and the head mistress, you know, the head of the school I was working at, stopped me and pulled me up on the time that I'd had off because I was recovering from this operation and this miscarriage. And remember, the PE teacher broke his ankle, and one of the senior staff came in and took his sick note off it and ripped it up and said, like, you're coming in like he's a PE teacher with a broken ankle.
It is crackers, isn't it? Though I remember when our mum used to work, she worked for a company a couple of years ago, and she was obviously, her children were grown up, you know, because we lived by ourselves, and so at Christmas it was fully expected that she would work all Christmas and all New Year, and the whole thing was, well, you know, you're the only one who hasn't got children. And so that issue that you raised, Marisha, about, you know, you're the one who doesn't have children, so you're expected to be in the office all the time. That's just as damaging to, you know, just because you don't have children doesn't mean you don't deserve a weekend or you don't deserve an evening or a time off or anything. And this is the problem, isn't it? It becomes a competition between people. The culture becomes a competition of, well, who's done the most hours and who's going to spend the longest in the office and who's going to be the first in.
The place where I worked with the PE teacher, that there was an unspoken competition. The person that sent the email earliest in the morning got a special mention in the staff briefing every week. I remember someone got it in at like 3:15 in the morning, and it was like some sort of Soviet hero. He was on post, you know, like posted around the school and paraded through. It was just so damaging. But staff turnover was really high. Staff satisfaction was really low. Absence levels were ironically really high because people just got to the point where they were so burnt out, like you couldn't drag yourself in anymore because you'd just been constantly working.
And it's as damaging to men as it is to women. And I remember when Dali, when we had Leon, when Leon was a baby, Dali had to go back to work. So he had his 2 weeks I think he had a week of paternity leave, but that week we were in hospital. So by the time we got home, he was back at work. And it was fully expected that he would be in work. He works in Manchester. So we had to leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning and get back till 7, 8 o'clock at night. But he was fully expected to be in the office for 8 o'clock, even though work didn't start till 9. And he wasn't, you couldn't just walk out at 5 o'clock, and he couldn't say, well, I think that's what I don't know whether he did try and say or not, but he couldn't say, I've got a new baby and a wife at home who is struggling. I need to be there. It was like, no, you be in the office and that's it. And that is not only damaging, like you say, on the point of view that they have to keep going, but also they're missing out on all of that, home life, work-life balance and all the rest of it. It's just not fair, is it?
I'm not entirely convinced. Oh, sorry, Marisha, go on.
No, I was just saying it's very toxic. I think that's the only way. It's purely a culture thing that seems to, quite frankly, it comes from the top, and it kind of just infests itself into business, doesn't it? And I think, and what I'm guilty of actually is maybe taking on. I recognise what other people need to do, so I'll compensate for that. So because I can, that's, I'm not saying it's right, but because I can. So yeah, again, it's still a toxic place to be because I shouldn't have to do that either. But yeah, it's a huge
What
thing.
do you mean, sorry, that if you see that other people are struggling because of their commitments, you'll take over some of their bits?
Possibly, yeah, exactly, yeah. If I have to say to someone, do you know what, get yourself off, the stuff still needs to be done, and in a time, and if it's not, accepted that people can work from home, then, where else does it happen? Someone's got to pick it up and do it. And I think there is a massive, preconception that, well, if you're working from home, you're not working, you just wiggle the mouse around and that's kind of it. And it's not, is it? Let's face it. And this stuff now has forced people to have to accept it. It's forced a lot of things for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's twofold. I think it's a positive way in as much as it's taught us all that actually we can use Zoom and we can use all the other things that are out there to be for business and to stay connected with people. And that actually people are still getting on with their work because they're grown-ups and they can.
Yeah.
In a way, I think that like the second wave of feminism in the 70s, everyone said like women didn't get it all, you just had to do it all. Like you just had to, now you had to look after the home and look after the children and manage the mental workload and go to work. And in a way, I worry that this working from home switch that we've had, while it is a positive thing, I don't know if it will entrench that. And I'm not convinced that presenteeism is a gender issue so far as men are present at the office more and women are at home, because I think women feel the pressure to be in the workplace more to make up for the bits of time that we miss. I know I used to work late on the days that I would pick up my daughter, but so would Dave. But I think, is it now the expectation that, all right, you have to leave work at 3:30 to pick your kids up, but when you get home, you put your bloody laptop on and you keep working? And, there's less wriggle room in a way for both genders.
I mean, this is the hope, isn't it? The hope is that this period of a lockdown that we've had has proven to the world that people are able to work from home. Now, somebody asked me a couple of years ago with road traffic, because we've always had a policy whereby staff can work flexibly. Obviously, we've got 4 of us in Lancashire and 2 of us in Yorkshire. And so we've never had a situation where the office is the kind of place where everybody works from. We've had people working remotely, working flexi-time and all the rest of it. And somebody asked me, what were we trying to do? And I said, we want to build a company that works for women, because if we build a company that works for women, it will work for men. And so if you need childcare, if you need time off, if you need to work flexibly, if you need to pick your kid up, if you need to go to assembly, you do that and your work-life balance works around it. And the reaction we used to get from other businesses was very much a sort of, well, that's a very far-out way of doing things, isn't it? That's never going to work. How do you know that your staff are working? It's like, well, we know that they're working because the work gets done,
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to build the business in the way that we're doing it if nobody was bloody working. And I was really hopeful that this period will have proved to the rest of the world and the rest of the business community that actually, this is how we can work and the world of work can change. But I was having a conversation with somebody not that long ago, and I will be vague purposefully because I don't want to highlight it. And the attitude was very much, the sooner we can get everybody back into work, the better. There's no excuse for people to be needing to work from home. Schools will be back open in September. Everybody should be back in the office. This coronavirus nonsense has gone on long enough. Everybody needs to be back in the office. Now, admittedly, that was a man working in a very traditional working office and working environment. But I felt, up until then, I've been really, really hopeful. And I suddenly thought, do you know what? It's just going to go back to normal. What vibe have you two got? Have you picked up that things might be changing, or have you had any of that feedback?
Go on, Hannah. Go on.
I think for some companies they will get back to what they were, because it just doesn't work for every company, and I understand that. Like, we're really lucky that we can have that sort of culture, because our work is done, it's self-evidenced, and we don't need any special equipment. All they need is a laptop to be able to do it. And we don't, the rest of the staff tend not to speak to clients. So if they're not doing it 9 to 5, then it doesn't really matter if they work, at the weekends or in the middle of the night or whatever, if that's what they choose to do. So I think for some, it is imperative that it goes back to offices and workshops and factories and stuff. And I think some people properly miss the camaraderie of an office. But I don't think really that presenteeism will be eradicated by this. I think what it might do is allow some more flexibility, that actually bits of it can be done at home.
But the thing is that the objections to flexible working and flexi time and working from home and all the rest of it that I've heard people say over the last kind of week to 2 weeks, they don't seem to be, they're not like, we need somebody in because we need somebody on reception or we need somebody answering the phone. That obviously is self-evident. They are things like, well, we need people to be able to stay in touch. We need those conversations that happen in the office. We need people to be abreast of, what's happening with every client. Those are issues that we have faced, very real issues. And we have, had situations where we've sometimes had 4 of us working in the office in Burnley, and then you and Alicia have felt like you've been not pushed out, but you're not in the loop. And we've had to work really hard to overcome that and make sure we were having regular meetings and phone calls and the WhatsApp conversation. So nobody's posed an issue to me yet that I've thought, well, actually, we were really lucky because we didn't have to, deal with that. Actually, we did deal with it, and we just dealt with it.
But there's 6 of us. If there's an office of 60, it's different.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Marisha, what conversations have you had?
I mean, I think again, it's a whole section or session of learning, and because I, very selfishly think, well, this is great. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do anything. I can meet with people and I'm saving a fortune in fuel and, time and all of this extra stuff. But, I do that anyway. So that's why. But actually, if you went into an office every day, your social life involved the people that were around you, literally, sitting next to you, behind you, etc. The chat, all of that kind of stuff. I agree. I think you have to work very hard for people to still feel included, and whatever size of business they are. And I've got, 2 things have highlighted it. I went into a client, they were doing the social distancing, some in, some out. And one of the guys there, his wife works in Central Leeds, and they basically said, this is all working swimmingly. You don't need to come back into the office. You're working from home now. And she was fucking devastated because that was her time. That was her, out. They'd go out from work and all sorts. And on the flip side, I'm working with another company that are currently onboarding somebody. that's really hard. You know, where do you get your company culture from when you can't go into an office and talk, or, you know, just pick up the vibe of whatever's going on in the business? So again, you know, have to address that. So I think it's, I don't think it's going to change for everybody. I think if they were that way inclined anyway, then fine, you know, because they were, you know, happy to embrace that and think about ways to work together. But I think lots of offices and lots of people, that's routine, very difficult to change, you know, and they want to go back to work because at the moment they're just in flux, you know, they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, it is really important to remember that some people like the structure and the routine of working in an office, and some people like simply just getting out of the house. And I remember, you know, I go back to when Leon was a baby. I mean, he's 10 now, so obviously it was 10 years ago. But Dally was really jealous of me because I was getting to spend time at home with the baby whilst he had to go out to work, and then he'd come home and I'd be in a really fucking bad mood with him because he'd been out talking to people and I've been stuck at home with the baby all day, you know. And I remember I went back to it when Leon was 5 months old because I got offered a promotion, and I was going to take kind of 6, maybe 9 months, but I went back early because I'd got offered this promotion. And I was desperate. By that point, I was desperate to get back to work and get some sort of routine. So, you know, we can't always assume that everybody wants to work from home, or everybody even wants to work flexibly. Some people really like having that structure to their day and that getting out of the house and going, like you say, going to work, especially, I suppose, if you live on your own. That's your social life. That's your structure, isn't it? And getting out and having conversations with people.
I think the danger though with presenteeism, I mean, some people like working, like Rachel, you like working, and I've never really known you take a weekend off, and you do that through choice. And I would say I hold my weekends like they're sacrosanct, and my evenings are as well. And I do my work, you know, I might do a 12-hour day, but once I turn off my laptop, that is it. And I make sure I build in time to have downtime, otherwise it makes me ill. But you don't. And I think for some people, they like that kind of constant working, like constantly being in touch. They like to be in control, feel like they know what's going on. I think if they're ambitious, then they feel like they have to be constantly touching it. Work, I mean.
We're only 25 minutes in. This is normally like for 40. Come on.
I think I've done well. But I think it's damaging, and I think it's the responsibility of a company and the management team to say to that person, you know, you really need to take some downtime, because productivity becomes far less, coherence becomes far less. Like Rachel, you demonstrate regularly. Like, it's not great. And then when you do finally get some downtime, people get ill, or people are more susceptible to injury and illness or ill mental health. And I think, you know, yes, it's okay to say work from home and work as much as you want, or work in the office and come in 9 till 5 or whatever. But I think it's the responsibility of the company to try and get people to take their annual leave, to have a set time when they turn off, to not expect people to answer their emails all throughout the day, and things like that.
No, I agree with you. I mean, you're absolutely right. I will work, and I like working, but I think the thing is, it's because it's my company, and I don't mean it's just my company, but, you know, as the three of us, we are directors, and it is our, you know, the book stops with us, and if it all goes tits up, you know, it's up to us. We are responsible jointly for all of us being able to pay our mortgages and feed our kids, and that is a responsibility that I take really heavily. So yeah, I do work all weekends, well, not all weekends, but I work most weekends. But it's because of that. And I think if I was employed, I don't think I would feel the need to do that. And I certainly don't expect our employees to work like that. You know, I think it's really important that if you are an employee, that you take the time and you take your evenings off and you take your weekends off, because it's crucial. But you're right, you know, I know I work too much, and the minute I have a day off, I start being ill, because that's when my body shuts down.
Alicia, you have 3 jobs essentially. How do you manage that drive to be constantly working?
Yeah, I mean, I do also fall into that trap of just being always on. Simple as that. you know, and I have to force myself to not be. And I think you have to, when I was employed, the breaking point came for me when I went to the dentist. Like first thing in the morning, I went to the dentist and I ended up having some, you know, a filling or something whilst I was there. And when I got in, you know, there was this like weird vibe, and it was, you know, it turned out it was like, well, where's Marisha? Why is she not in yet? You know, why is she not in? You know, she should have been here by now. What's wrong? You know, and other people were like, well, maybe she's had to get something done. Maybe there's a delay or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And there was that such a reliance. I was like, this is not right. And I hear you know, I don't expect my staff to do that, but sometimes it's assumed as well. I think you kind of have to, you know, explicitly say, you know, go home, you know, or take time off, or do something. But, you know, to answer the question, people will say to me, like, do you not have like fixed days when you do certain things? And I don't, because that's not what the businesses I'm in kind of allow for. You know, I have to be quite flexible with stuff. So I just kind of, you know, take it in bits and bats, really. And I've had to learn to listen to when I work best, and when it's too much and when I have to stop. You know, so I think, but that also comes with age, you know, and time and all of that kind of stuff. Because, you know, but, you know, actually when I look back and when I was, you know, 19, 20, I still worked a lot, you know. I think it's just something that when you give a shit, quite frankly, you kind of just do, you know. And I'm not saying that people that take time off don't, you know, it's not that. I think it's just there, you know, sometimes, and you just have to think of it a different way.
I think that's it, because I would, you're absolutely right. If it was not my company, I wouldn't, you know, when I worked for the NHS, I was really strict with myself, because, you know, the work just never went down. It was just constant. The minute you did one bit, another pile twice as big arrived. And so I was really strict with myself. Like, you sign off at 5 o'clock and you don't think about it until you get in at 9 o'clock the next morning. But because this is my company, this is my responsibility, this shit, you know, I feel I have to work hard. But we've just had a comment from Kate, actually. She says she was in a workplace where you're expected to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I mean, that must be just soul destroying. And she said that the amount of people that were suffering because of that was horrendous. But you just actually said something really interesting, Marisha, as well. You said that is setting the expectation. And this is something I'm conscious of. I don't want people to look at me and think that's what I should be doing, or feel guilty because I'm working at the weekend and somebody else isn't. I don't want that, but that's in essence the trickle down, isn't it? That you set expectations by accident.
Absolutely. And that's what, like, when I first joined Grow Traffic, the job before that, we had an on-call rota, so I was on call sometimes, and sometimes I was away traveling for work, and sometimes I would have to do bits in the evening, but not very often. But then when I started Grow Traffic, you know, joined Grow Traffic, I really, really, you know, do give a shit about it, obviously, and fell into that trap of working constantly or working really late and starting really early. And I quickly realised that it made me unproductive and mentally unwell, and I didn't sleep, and you know, the next day I was shit, and I could do it for about a week, and then after that I was just useless. And so I had to start being really strict with myself to make sure that, you know, if something doesn't get done, the world is not going to end, the business is not going to collapse because I've not done something that day, and I'll do it the next day. And I think because you do it one way and I do it the other, and people see that we do both, and we tell people it's okay to turn off your laptop at 5 o'clock and stop working, I think that probably balances it out. But I did find it difficult to fight against that and say, no, I'm gonna stop work now because it's 5:30 or whatever. And sometimes I do feel guilty for it, but I know I need to do it.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely do need to do it. And this is the thing, I do it through choice. And I'm not doing it, you know, I work. And the other thing is, though, that people don't see is that I take an hour off at lunchtime, quite a lot of the time, to go and spend some time outside and muck out my horses and stuff. So whilst it looks like I'm working, you know, from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, I'm not. Often I've had 2 hours off in the afternoon or whatever. So it's that thing, isn't it? But so anyway, back to.
Hang on, Risha was going to say something then.
I was just going to say that it's. I think when it comes to staff, actually, and it's easier to relate that. I think there's also a lot more appreciation if you can be flexible with whatever people need. And if you say, yeah, it's fine to do such and such, or yes, take that hour, or whatever it is, the appreciation is immense. And what you get back is, 5 times, So I think rather than just going, pushing for more and more, actually, how would you act? How would you behave? What do you want? And actually you get a lot more from people that way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, I think that will be the change. I don't think, the presenteeism is going to stop, but I think maybe a bit more appreciation is around now for what people do and how they interact and things like that.
I think that's one thing that we've always really tried to do with our staff, because we do it with each other as well, is, if one person has a shitting huge pile of work on, we've always said it's fine to, we have a WhatsApp group or whatever, put it in the WhatsApp group. I'm really bloody struggling today, guys. Can somebody take something off me? And I don't think there's ever been a situation where somebody has asked for help with something and somebody hasn't. One of us will take something or rearrange something or say, what I'm doing at the moment is not quite as crucial. So yeah, I'll write that blog for you. You get on with doing that. And I think that's really crucial as well, is instilling that as part of your culture, in that it's not a weakness. It's not admitting I can't do my job. Whether it's saying like, look, I'm snowed under, please can somebody help? And I think that's crucial as to how you work as a team, is to be able to help each other out like that, isn't it?
Dally's just made a really good point, actually. I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says that the bigger the business, the more that can become ingrained in the culture. And it's almost like feeling like you have to be part of the party. It's this FOMO. And I have worked in places like that where, if you didn't see the email, and then you're the idiot, because you're just not, you're sitting in the meeting the next day going, sorry, what was this? And trying to catch up. And there is this expectation that, you read and digest every single fucking email that you get, and the email thread is like 73 emails and everybody's copied in and it's arse covering, especially in public sector. And it's like, but that's, again, it comes from the top. And once it's ingrained in your culture, it's really difficult to switch it round. And it's so damaging. Like Dally, for example, had really long work days, worked himself ragged, worked every weekend, never saw his kid. It was just so damaging to work life, home life.
It was little things as well. So his boss instilled this. They had a Monday morning meeting whereby she wanted a feedback on what the website had been doing the previous week. Well, in order to get the stats on what the website's been doing for a week, you have to get that on a Sunday. So, by saying that the meeting was on first thing on a Monday morning, which worked for her timetable, she was inevitably saying, you have now got to work on a Sunday. So for about 2 years, he spent every, 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday having to work to compile this report for the Monday morning meeting. And it's little things like that, isn't it? It's just not thinking about it when you are structuring your timetable of your working week or your team or whatever. Are you inevitably asking somebody to do extra time, extra hours at weekend or in the evenings or something? Joanne's made a really good point as well. She said that when she was working in a corporate role, she made a conscious effort to encourage a good work-life balance. And it's what we've just said, isn't it? It's that it comes from the top, that culture and that ability to have time off or to shut down, to shut your laptop, to shut your phone off at 5 o'clock, say, right, no, this is it. It comes absolutely from your top, from whether that's your manager or your director or your boss or whatever. That's where it starts, isn't it?
She says as well, it's so easy to slip into a culture of being busy, her quotation marks. And she's right. It's almost shameful to say, I ain't got enough work on. Because, you're some
5 minutes.
You're some sort of unproductive oaf that can't, find something to do with the time. And I think that's a major problem. Like, how long is your to-do list? And I can't get it. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, God, I'm so busy. Like, I absolutely hate that. But I think that's pushed out in companies, because if you're not just run off your feet, you're either not earning your wage or the company's not earning it or whatever. And it's so damaging, and it's such bullshit, because in the times when you are not busy come the most like remarkable gems of inspiration. Like the majority of our business development is done when I'm not busy.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like, we use Asana, and I know a lot of companies use systems like this to schedule work out and to allocate work out and stuff. And I felt guilty. So I do most of the audits for our clients, and an audit is kind of 5, 6, 7 hours worth of work. So there's been weeks where I've had one audit and a couple of other jobs in, and I've looked at my Asana and thought, shit, everybody's going to think I'm slacking, because like you look at somebody else's list and they've got 50 things to do that week, and I've got 5, even though it's the same amount of time. But I've thought, like, oh God, like, what can I put in? Right, put in that I need to phone somebody so that it looks like I've got more tasks that I need to do. And again, it's that culture of you've got to look busy as well as be busy, haven't you? You've got to be seen to be busy, and that's so dangerous.
In a job I used to have, if I just wanted a bit of time off in the day, like 10 minutes break or something, I'd pick up a piece of paper and a pen, and I'd just walk around the grounds and like look really important and busy, like I was on my way somewhere, but I'd just be carrying this pen on a trip.
Taking your pen for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm conscious we're coming up to time. How are we going to ensure it? You know, as I said, I was really hopeful that the world was going to change after lockdown, and that everybody was going to magically see the benefits in working from home and working flexi time. And I think obviously it's going to take a little bit more than that to convince people who've worked 9 to 5 in an office all their lives that actually there's another way of doing it. How are we, the people who have seen the light, gonna influence that change, do you think? What can we do?
That's a very big assumption. That's a very big assumption that people want to work from home. You know, that we've seen the light. Maybe they don't want to. They quite enjoy doing what they're doing and kind of like that vibe. I think, you know, to answer the question, what do we do? I think we are lucky to be able to bring change in our own businesses. And that's how we, you know, change culture and mindset and things like that. But like we've kind of already said, it's not for everybody. So I think we also have to be aware of that it isn't for everybody, and maybe some people need a bit more structure and a bit more engagement, you know, whether that be, you know, through calls or through meetings or whatever it is. So I think, yeah, we have to have a balanced view on it.
Hannah, what do you think?
I think working from home is actually going to deepen the problem, because I think there's going to be less of a barrier between home and work life. Like, you can't leave the office at 5 o'clock because they're locking up, and you know, you have to keep, like, you just keep working because you just sat there and you 5 more minutes in and just keep going until it's time to, you know, cook tea, or you realize it's dark or something. I actually think this is going to make it worse.
I did that for women. Yeah, I did that thing last night. I after tea, I had one slide to do on a presentation. I thought I'll just finish this one slide and get this bit done. And an hour and a half later, I realised it was bedtime. And that's the thing; it's so dangerous because there isn't that barrier, is there? There isn't that, right, get in the car, drive 10 minutes, decompress, and now you're home. And the other thing is it impacts on home life. Like, I'll come off a Zoom call, and Leon will come running in, and Leon hasn't spoken to me for several hours because I've been busy and working. And in my head, I'm like, I need to decompress. And he's in, and he wants to talk to me, and he wants to engage, and he wants to start chatting about something. So there's that, you know, that not having that separation thing, I think, is another element of it, isn't it? But I think you're absolutely right, Marisha. I think the crucial thing that businesses are going to have to remember going forwards now is having that flexibility. And remembering, some people want to work 9 to 5 in an office, some people don't. Some people want to be able to work in the office sometimes and work from home sometimes. Some people, you know, like Alicia, who works for us, she quite often has a lie-in during the day, but then works really late into the night. and that's fine. But we're going to have to build our workplaces so that they can accommodate all of these different people, aren't we? And I think that's something we've never done before.
I think as well, like, sorry, Misha, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I agree with that.
Yeah. I think as well, like business owners and senior managers and stuff need to realise that if your staff are having to work 12-hour days to keep up with all the work that's going on, either you need some more staff or your business isn't profitable, and you need to look at your actual pricing strategies and your margins and stuff, and see why your staff are having to work so much to get through the workload.
Yeah, also maybe it's a case of looking at, operational, activity. Because being smarter, slicker, it doesn't mean there's less people. It's more about, there's definitely a space of, because we've always done that way. So actually, does that need a review as well? And maybe, again, that comes from the top, in as much as, sometimes it's hard for managers to even take a step back because there's so much pressure coming in from somewhere else. To be able to affect that change themselves. So there's lots of different things that can be done to kind of address those things. And I think it's addressing, seeing that it's a problem, as opposed to just, oh, it's all right, you should be working because that's what you paid for, which is bollocks.
Funnily enough, you've just made pretty much the exact point that Joanne made. She said that the owners will be on excellent managers who can balance business needs with the needs of the people, and it is exactly that. It's human resources, isn't it? It's remembering that your staff are human beings, and that I think if nothing else, I am quite hopeful that businesses have come to realise that they at least need to consider the needs of their staff, and they need to consider what other caring responsibilities they've got and everything else, even if the workplace does generally go back to a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday routine. I'm hopeful that we've got at least a little bit more consideration for the needs of people. So that's progress of a kind, isn't it?
Again, sorry, that's my horrible dog. Sorry. I guess as well, like the law could do with changing, because one of our clients is an HR provider. And so I've been writing content for them. And the more I've written and the more I've researched, the more I've come to realise that you can be as benevolent of an employer as you want, but when it comes down to hey lads, hey, it's what the law says, and employment law is very dogmatic. And all right, ACAS tribunals will usually side with the employee, but nonetheless, an employer can fall back on saying, well, you have to work where I tell you, you have to do what I tell you, you have to do the hours that I tell you, sign this bit of paper and do yourself out of the working time regulations. And I suppose until the law catches up and gives people leniency or permission to be lenient, or gives employees protection, I suppose. But at the moment, it's just a blanket, you kind of have to do as you're told.
But they do work hand in hand, don't they? Because we've been full circle in a way here. As they changed the law on paternity leave. Fathers still didn't feel that they could take that because they were
pay gap.
They were seen as pussies if they wanted to take time off.
The breadwinner.
Yeah. So it absolutely, those two things, the legislation and the culture, need to work hand in hand, but we're not going to change one without changing the other, and it's a bit chicken and egg as to which we have to change first, isn't it?
Sure.
But we've run out of time anyway, but thank you so much to both of you. Unfortunately, with one simple pandemic, we haven't changed the world entirely, but maybe if we keep having conversations like this, we'll get there.
There's a case of the bubonic plague in China, so you never know. Another pandemic might help us change the world.
Absolutely, yeah. If we can't change the world with one pandemic, maybe we can change the world with two pandemics.
Just like killing people off. Oh, that's going to help, isn't it? Yeah. It's fine.
Oh, we've tried everything else, haven't we? We've tried marching, we've tried changing the law. Let's try Black Death.
Kill the bastards. Yeah. Hey guys, we kept it really clean.
Yeah, we haven't touched on anal bleaching at all once in this session.
Why did you say touched on?
Thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate your time. We will be back next week with something else. Thank you so much to everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye.